Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast. OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast. My name is Brandon Drum. I'm here with Parker Thune, and we've got some news for you all. If you're here for scrimmage notes, check. If you're here for the Heisman Hangout and a big, huge recruiting weekend for the University of Oklahoma, check. We're going to talk about all that right here on this podcast. But before we get to that, we got to pay some bills.
That we do. This episode, folks, is brought to you by Manscaped. Did you know one man every hour, every day is diagnosed with testicular cancer? In fact, testicular cancer is the most common form of cancer among men aged 15 to 35. So, with April being National Testicular Cancer Awareness Month, our friends over at Manscaped have partnered with the Testicular Cancer Society to help spread awareness for men's health and early cancer detection. With this in mind, you can perform simple routine self-checks at home while enjoying Manscaped products that you use every single day, like the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, which features 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads as well as dual LED spotlights so you can achieve better visibility. Don't like making a mess? Well, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is waterproof. Shave in the shower, in the bath, or even in the ocean. And you can bring this trimmer wherever you go, too, thanks to its wireless charging capabilities and travel lock feature. In addition to providing the right tools and solutions for comfortable and easy grooming, Manscaped is committed to raising awareness and giving support for fighters, survivors, and families impacted by testicular cancer. That's why they'll be donating $50,000 to the Testicular Cancer Society. So help save lives and balls by going over to manscaped.com/TCS and sharing their funny, educational check yourself video. And while you're at it, grab 20% off and free shipping with code OU Insider. That's 20% off and free shipping with code OU Insider.
There you go. All right. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Fools. All right. I laugh because I'm a dad, and those are funny to me. All right, Parker. Like you won't even laugh at my jokes, man.
I cracked a smile.
Yeah, well, it wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough.
It ain't good enough, as Coach Venables himself would say.
Yep.
And right now, one area where it ain't good enough quite yet, and this is no surprise, offensive line's got some work to do. And we expected this, right? Like, it's April 5th. They're breaking in 5 new starters, whoever those 5 may be. It's going to be a completely new crew come the season. Obviously, on April 5th, they were not going to have it all figured out. So before anybody goes doom and gloom on this, look, the expectation was never that Oklahoma was going to have it all figured out on the offensive front on April 5th. And honestly, I think given everything that went on throughout the offseason, the additions that the Sooners made, the jumps that you expected guys to take, if there is one position group that you're okay with not hearing super glowing reports out of spring practice, it's the offensive line, because that's exactly the group that everybody figured, like, okay, you got a bunch of stuff to figure out. The fact that every single position group across the board, save for the offensive line, Brandon, has not only been good, but really good in spring practice. And you're having a lot of healthy give and take between the offensive and the defensive units, despite some inconsistencies up front offensively, I think speaks to the reality that this team can and will be very competitive in the SEC this fall.
I agree. And again, I don't think it's shocking that the defense is always going to be besting the offense more often than not early on, particularly in spring. Like, that is not a surprise. That generally happens even when OU has a crappy defense. But the offense wins more when OU's defense isn't really up to snuff. Last year was the first year in a while that we heard the defense was having a strong spring, because it was year 2 under Venables and that defense. So they started to really understand things. That offensive line, though, was good enough to make up for a lot of deficiencies. in a lot of areas. And you also had a super experienced quarterback in Dylan Gabriel. So there was, as you would put it eloquently earlier, a lot of give and take as far as offense, defense goes last year. This year, it hasn't been as much give and take. And generally, when you return about 80% of your offense or your defense in production, that's going to happen early on in spring. And then when you add who OU added, whether it be via the portal, via recruiting, via just attrition, and now the young talented guys are now being put in place, and they've been there for a year or two already under Venables. Yeah, it's not a good recipe for a brand new offensive line, Parker.
No,
And
it is not.
yeah,
And I think I think the reality that sources are acknowledging that the offensive line has problems like that in itself shows you that there's a lot of honesty and transparency about what's going on behind the scenes for Oklahoma football. Because, for instance, if you were hearing on April 5th, oh, the offensive line looks amazing, then that just sounds like sunshine pumping, right? Like, regardless of whether it's true or not, if all of your offensive line problems are solved on April 5th after you lose your entire starting front,
that's the 2017 offense, by the way.
Yeah, everybody is kind of hesitant to believe that. Everybody is taking that with several grains of salt. But I will say this. Although the offensive line is a question mark right now, and there will undoubtedly be some things to figure out over the next couple of weeks leading up to the spring game and on into fall camp, man, it's amazing how highly multiple sources have spoken of this defense as a whole, and specifically a couple of those newcomers, one of them being Jaden Jackson. I mean, that kid has just blown people. And here's the thing. When we talk to our quote unquote sources, we're not going and talking to rando janitors who happen to be hanging out in the Everest Center while practice is going on. No, we talk to people that know football. And when people that know football are saying Jaden Jackson's the best defensive tackle on the team, Jaden Jackson could be a freshman All-American, Jaden Jackson is that dude, you hear it enough times and it no longer becomes speculation, or it no longer becomes the product of one impressive practice session that several people just happen to be present for and he had a lot of eyes on. No, Jaden Jackson has dominated start to finish throughout the spring session.
And it started back at bowl practice, honestly. You started hearing people that are very, very versed when it comes to defensive line play walk away from those Alamo Bowl practices and go, whoa, this cat's different. And you're starting to hear a lot of that with David Stone too. Like it was, he's super, to start spring, he was super talented, but he's super raw. He's got to learn how to use his hands. He's got to learn how to do this. He's got to learn how to do that. And then as spring has gone along, you're starting to hear, oh, wow, he's picked up this little bit and he did this and he did that. And man, those two players are going to be insanely hard to block as they mature and get older. And that, I've even had multiple sources, Parker, say Jaden Jackson and David Stone will be the starters by middle of the season and all that type of stuff. Like, and that's their opinion, right? Like, I think you have to take that and say, okay, let's see it September through November before we start, crowning these dudes the second coming of Tommy Harris, Dusty Dvorak, and Gerald McCoy, right? Like, it's been or Jordan Phillips. Like, those are four guys when you think of OU football synonymous with great defensive tackle play, right? And Leroy Selman, obviously, or the Selman brothers. But it's just it's very, very difficult to completely buy into it. But then when we go and watch the practices that we've been able to watch, and you're like, okay, yeah, I kind of get it. Like, they look different than the rest of the defensive line, particularly because they're freshmen and they look very similar to a lot of the older guys physically. That's scary. That's scary. That means by the time they go through a couple of years with Schmitty, they're going to look like Todd Bates's Clemson D lines. And they generally kind of do already, but I mean, they're really going to look like those cats. And again, I harken back to when they signed. Remember what I said, this source, and this is as good as it gets when it comes to sources within the program, Parker, and you know this. When they said getting David Stone and Jaden Jackson in the same class was like getting Tyler Davis and Brian Barisi in the same class at Clemson. They were in two different classes again. I remind everybody. So this has been the thought, and now you're seeing it play out through spring. Now, it's got to continue to play out through fall. That's the other thing. Now, when OU's offensive line is healthy and Garen Hatchett's there and they add another piece after spring, are they still doing those things, right? Are they still doing those things to the well-versed offensive lineman, the experienced offensive lineman? Now, when they start to do that, and don't get me wrong, the guys that are going up now are really experienced, so I want to make that clear. But Garen Hatchett was on the Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line last year. Started, mind you. So if we still hear that buzz when Everett's healthy, he was doing it against Everett, Jaden Jackson was. But if we still hear that buzz with both those guys when Hatchett and Everett and whoever else they figure out on the other guard, Fabici, Waywoo, right? Like we've heard so much good things about him that I think center and whatever guard that Fabici decides he's not playing or Beatonbow decides he's not playing gets figured out. If they're really doing that and the line's solidified, because I trust Beatonbow, Parker. I do. I think that offensive line is going to be good. And if they continue to do that against that offensive line, the defensive line just might be good. And that's what everybody's kind of been saying, right? They're like, well, they're going up against a really good defensive line. So it's really hard to judge this offensive line as a whole right now because one, they're learning. They haven't played together. Two, that D line's nasty right now. So until you get all that figured out, isn't it really hard to judge the O-line?
Yeah, I don't think anybody should be judging the O-line at this point in time because, again, you have to see the big picture. And the big picture here is they're replacing 5 starters. This was never going to be an overnight fix. There was going to be a process, not only figuring out who your best 5 guys are, but where they fit alongside one another, because you got a bunch of guys that can and do play multiple positions. And with the injury to Troy Everett, that only creates additional shuffling that has to occur in order to find the solve. Because right now, like I'll be upfront. I don't think Troy Everett is back by the time the season starts. That would be.
I don't know why BV said that.
That would be a remarkable rehab if he is back to action or even back to practicing by the time the season starts. So I think you're rolling into week 1, August 31st, 2024, with somebody other than Troy Everett starting at center, whether that is Josh Bates or Garen Hatchett or whomever it might be. But it was always going to take some time. It is taking some time. What you like to hear, I think, if you need something to be confident about, is that some of those guys that were probably expected to be second teamers are making really, really strong strides, good pushes. The upperclassmen, Daniel Akinkunmi has been impressive. Heath Zaida has been impressive. Logan Howland is a guy that's been shouted out by multiple members of the coaching staff. And so that right there, that gets you confident that your starting 5 come the fall might not be what you expected it to be at the beginning of the spring, but you're going to have 5 capable guys. Are they going to be a force collectively? I don't know. It's too early to make that determination. You are going to the SEC, so you're going to have to elevate, obviously. But again, this is what I always go back to, Brandon. I trust Bill Beatonbow. He's never given me a reason not to.
And let's remember, we haven't talked a whole lot about Jake Sexton, but he's been starting at one of the tackles, opposite of, or not Jake Sexton, excuse me, Jake Taylor. Excuse me, Jake Taylor. Yep. And we haven't been talking about Taylor a lot. And yet there's number 79 out there every time with the ones, right? Like, is this going to be the year that Jake Taylor becomes the Jake Taylor everybody thought he was going to be when he arrived? I think that seems to be kind of an under talked about and discussed and under discussed player, right? Like and portion of the offensive line, because you haven't heard a lot of negativity about the tackles. You've heard a lot of negativity about center and the other guard, right? Opposite of Weiwu, but you haven't. You, I think what OU fans, again, and what I said earlier, you need to understand is that they feel pretty good about the three of the guys right now, right? Taylor, Sexton, Weiwu. Like, they feel really good about those guys. You feel good about Hatch and Everett when they're healthy, but they haven't been healthy. So now you got to figure something out. Like, is the fact that they're struggling with the snaps with the number one center in the 2023 class, is that not a shocking discovery?
It's surprising, yes.
that was like, and you want to know what? I'm leaving the Everest Center the other day, and somebody you and I know really well walks by, and he stops me, and I talk to them for about 30, 40 minutes, sitting outside there, and they were going to walk into the practice, right? And they specifically said that whenever it went down, that is what they noticed more than anything, was like, it's not like it's not getting to them, it's that it's hanging too long in the air. They said it's not a direct shot back, so there's like some hang where like the quarterbacks are having to like reach out and grab it to get it there so they can get back in their drop quicker, and it's causing some timing issues. And from my understanding is that it hasn't been an every play thing. It's like here or there, but here or there is too much, right? Like,
Especially in the SEC, it's too much.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're going to get ironed out. In Beaton Bow, we trust, right? Like, that has to be the way OU fans have to look at that, because when's the last time you looked at it and you said, man, that offensive line is just terrible? How long ago has that been?
In the time
Can't remember, can you?
Well, no. In the time that I've been covering the team, Brandon, which is what, 5 going on 6 years now. Yeah, never happened. Never happened. And Beatonbow's been here going on
Beaton
what,
Bow, you
11
trust.
years? Yeah.
Let's talk about some other guys, other positions.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll add on the offensive line is, hey, you got the number one offensive guard in the 2024 cycle showing up in June. So there's another piece, additional reinforcement, if that makes you feel any better. Bauer Sharp at tight end, Brandon. Like, talk about another guy whose stock just continues to go up and up and up and up. Bauer Sharp seems to be a guy at tight end.
I'm telling you right now, he leaped over a dude and kept his stride at the 10-yard line yesterday in the scrimmage and scored. Like, what? We're talking about a dude that's 250 pounds.
And a dude that's a converted quarterback.
Yeah. He is a freak. Everybody raves about Bauer Sharp. My goodness. Once again, every scrimmage, every practice, Bauer Sharp, Bauer Sharp, Bauer Sharp. Oh, you might just, use the tight end this year. It was unfortunate last year that with Salchuk, right? Like, it was unfortunate. Like, it stunk for him. It stunk for the team that they didn't use him properly. But it seems like Luttrell's going out being a tight end coach with Joe John, both of them. They're actively looking to use the tight ends now any way they possibly can. And good for them. That opens things up for the wide receivers, right? So, what's your overall take on the production and usage of the tight end this spring from what we've heard so far?
Well, you need to have a tight end in the SEC. You need to have a guy that you can count on at that position. And he doesn't necessarily need to be an every down guy. And I don't think the tight end will be an every down piece in Oklahoma's offense, especially because of how much talent they have at receiver and the way that they can spread things out. Like you get a guy like Deion Burks in the slot. You want to give him space to operate and hopefully give him as many opportunities working across the middle, working near the first down marker as you possibly can. So I think you'll see a lot of 4 wide, even 5 wide for Oklahoma because they are so deep at wide out. But you have to have, in a conference like the SEC, you have to have somebody that you can plug and play at tight end that is going to be a weapon in the receiving game, and B, a dominant 6th blocker at the point of attack when you need him to be. And that's the one thing I'm going to be curious to see is does Bauer Sharp prove to be as strong of a blocker as he is a pass catcher? Because that's what's really going to enable him to be a 50 snap a game guy in Oklahoma's offense, if 50 snaps for a tight end is a reasonable expectation. But I can see a platoon type of thing coming to fruition where you have Bauer Sharp in passing down situations and Jake Roberts on the field in rushing down situations. The injury to Jake Roberts and the fact that he has been on the shelf this spring has just naturally created much more of an opportunity for Bauer Sharp to shine. But again, the one thing I go back to and the one thing I'm kind of holding out on with Bauer Sharp is he going to be as good of a blocker as he is a pass catcher? Because you can't you can't thrive on an every down basis in the SEC as a tight end unless you can do both effectively. And if you have a guy that can do both effectively, it increases the efficiency of your entire offense because you don't have to substitute personnel near as much, and you have a legitimately equal threat on any given down.
Yep.
Via the pass, via the run.
Yeah, it's like I said, it opens up the outside because the second you have that tight end, I think you just said that as well, is that safety has to account for the tight end. The linebackers have to account for the tight end. And they can't just be watching the slots. They can't just be watching, the outside receivers. It makes it to where it's almost impossible to bracket because if you have a threat over the middle, that bracketing becomes a nuisance. And you're going to have gaping holes. And once that offense figures out a way to get that tight end in that spot, night, and it's going to be night all day. Like, and it's particularly when you have a guy as athletic as Bauer Sharp. And I think the funny thing is like when Oklahoma first started recruiting Bauer Sharp, it was like, who, a quarterback? He only had like 370 yards last year receiving and a couple of touchdowns.
And that's what everybody said, right? Is really?
Yeah. And it's like,
really? Like, this is the guy?
And lo and behold, here comes Nick Saban before he retired after the guy. Here comes Georgia. Here comes LSU. Here comes everybody trying to come get this cat. Once they watched his film, they're like, whoa. And before he even blew up and became that 4-star transfer that everybody raved about by the time the transfer cycle ended, people in Norman that we were talking to in the Switzer Center were like, we like this kid from Southeast Louisiana. We think he's the best tight end. We're going to go after him. And they did. And they got him. And so far this spring, that has been a godsend for the Sooners so far offensively. I'm excited to see him wearing that number 10 out there. He's going to remind some people he's very, very different. He's not as big as Mark Andrews, but he moves a lot like him, right? I don't think he's going to be as physical as Andrews because Andrews was just a physical specimen. And there's not very many of those. I think he's a more athletic Blake Bell. Is that fair? He's going to remind a lot of people in how he plays of Braden Willis, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's recency bias, obviously, but that was a very
Right.
easy comparison to make, just getting the chance to
It's
watch
because of
him
athleticism.
up close. Because I mean, he's a
Glitchy.
very, very good athlete,
Mm-hmm.
and he's got a pretty identical frame to Willis.
Yep.
Honestly, like not quite as tall as Austin Stogner was, but just a lot more fluid in the way that he moves and runs routes and all that. So yeah,
Non-pro day, Austin Stogger. Pro day, Austin Stogger was moving. That was different.
yeah, but you
That was
do
a
like
different
it is.
Stog.
It is reminiscent of Braden Willis watching Bauer Sharp move around out there. And if he ends up being Braden Willis, I mean, what did Braden Willis have? 600, 700 yards in 2022
Yeah.
in his
Good year.
final season at Oklahoma. If that's the kind of year Bauer Sharp has, yeah, you will take that all day long.
Willis had good enough year that he's making plays for the San Francisco 49ers now. And
Well,
that's pretty
making
good.
special teams plays, but yes,
Yeah, but I mean, he's on the team and
he is on the roster
he wasn't going
on
to
the
get
50.
drafted until that season took place.
No, he was not.
Let's put it that way. So, all right. I think another name, we heard a lot more about Mike Hawkins. He even got some run with the ones yesterday. They're trial by fire right now with him, making sure he's going to be ready for that season, right? Going up against that defense. He made some plays. Both quarterbacks made plays. Both quarterbacks made mistakes, from what I've been told.
Correct.
And so it's trial by fire. I heard Hawkins made some crazy throws. I heard the throw that Jackson Arnold made to Dion Burks in the corner of the end zone, the toe tap, was just an absolute dime piece. I heard that I believe Hawkins hit Jaden Gibson, right? Was that what it was? I gotta go back to my notes.
I don't recall, but
Hold on, I'm
yeah,
looking.
what I do know is obviously, if it isn't completely public knowledge, if everybody isn't aware, I think most are, but if everybody isn't aware, Casey Thompson is just kind of going through the motions right now as he
Yeah.
recovers from that torn ACL. So the two quarterbacks that are getting the most reps are obviously Arnold as QB1 and then Michael Hawkins, the freshman. And so obviously Arnold has gotten the majority of the run with the ones, but there's been a healthy dose of that action that has gone to Michael Hawkins as well. And he has really excelled.
Yep. Yeah, it's I think anybody that's shocked by that kind of didn't watch Hawkins play as a senior.
That's what I'm saying, man. That's what I'm saying. That kid.
It's just kind of funny because at the end of the day, we went to bat for him to move up much further than they ever did. And we might be proven right pretty early.
I
So
believe
we'll see.
I believe
So we'll see.
Now, I will say that Hawkins had not thrown an interception for the entirety of the spring practice period up until yesterday.
Yeah.
And you want to take
one was
a guess?
batted though. So does that really
guess
count?
who got him?
Well, you know if you're on OU Insider.
You know if you're on OU Insider.
Both of them.
I'll share this with the people though. Eli Bowen got him.
One of
Bowen.
Them. One of them. The
Eli
other one
Bowen
McCarty
picked off Michael Hawkins. And that right there, that underscores another very encouraging trend thus far in spring. And that is that Lil Bowen is making plays. And so for everybody that figured, again, that he was only getting that scholarship because his older brother is a hell of a football player, that could not be further from the truth. And Eli's already proving that he might be worthy of situational consideration at cornerback this fall. He's that sharp, and he's got ball skills.
He's wearing the weirdest number, bro. And like
36
or 36, yeah. Like what?
That'll last a year.
I hope, man, because that is just like when it almost feels like when you see a 36 come out there. Even if they're a scholarship guy, you're like, that's got to be a
You're like, oh
walk-on.
no. Like what happens this fall when
Why is there a walk-on out there?
What happens this fall when the completely uninformed fan that does not pay attention to recruiting at all sees the 5'9" kid wearing number 36 walk onto the field?
Walk on. I think he's like, is he 5'9"
He's
or is he
5'9".
5'10"? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not as tall as Big Bro, is he? So, but he plays a lot like him. Very
And
much
again,
like him.
folks, to emphasize, we've shared plenty of details with you. There are a ton more details over on the paywall side at ouinsider.com. We had very comprehensive scrimmage notes within an hour or two last night of the scrimmage wrapping up.
Yeah, it was up quick. We were we were blessed to be on top of it very fast. Let's talk about, I guess, the shockers of all non-shockers. And when I say non-shockers, like legitimately not into shock. How many times throughout sources did we hear Deion Burks made this play? Deion Burks made that play. Deion Burks made this play.
It's
Deion
kind of
Burks
like
made that play.
with Jaden Jackson, man. Like Deion Burks and Jaden Jackson have been the talk of camp from the jump. That is never, like, there has never been a day of practice or scrimmage or whatever. There has never been a day of team activities where you haven't heard Deion Burks made XYZ amazing play or Jaden Jackson made XYZ amazing play. It is a daily occurrence for both of those guys that they are doing impressive things on the practice field.
What did Gabe say? It was like if Sterling Shepard and who had a baby, that's who Jaden Jackson would be, or Deion Burks would be.
I don't know.
I can't remember. It was another OU wide receiver, and it was hilarious because you totally can see it. Was it Jalen Saunders? I think it was Jalen Saunders and Sterling Shepard. If they had a baby, that would be what it would look like. And if OU fans remember how good Jalen Saunders was and how fast he was, and then you remember how elusive and fast Sterling Shepard was in his prime, that's scary for opposing defenses. It's fun for Latrell and Arnold and Hawkins and Thompson, right? But it's not going to be fun for those opposing defenses if it pans out and everything continues to trend. And remember, it's just spring. So, the young linebackers, real quickly, before we move on to recruiting, they have had a phenomenal spring.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody has been, you don't really ever hear Stutzman's name a lot because it's old hat at this point. Like, okay, yeah, he's an All-American. He's really good. I mean, it's like if Billy Bowman, when he gets healthy, it's like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We know he's a stud. Whatever. Like he's making the plays we expect him to make. But Lewis Carter, Kip Lewis, Deshaun McCullough, every day you hear those guys are making plays. They're doing this. They're doing that. So I think that's another bright spot in a very, very deep position at linebacker, by the way. Deep.
If you want to hear something that is encouraging about Danny Stutzman, I had one source tell me yesterday that
go ahead.
Michael Hawkins took a snap from the shotgun, and pretty much the second the ball hit his hands, Stutzman was on him. That source said if it had been a real game, Stutzman would have knocked him the hell out.
Oh, that's scary.
Yes, it is.
It doesn't.
Not the guy you want bearing down on.
The doom and gloomers with the offensive line, by the way.
Oh man,
it was like a Bosworth blitz, right? Back when they showed him, whenever they would go up the middle, right as the ball snapped, he's like on top of the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Stutzman has been that guy, and he will be that guy this fall.
That's and you remember back his freshman year when you saw flashes of that.
Oh,
he hurt his elbow. And when he hurt his elbow, that hurt OU's defense. Like they were not as good without him out there. And remember when he hurt his elbow? Like you kind of knew he was different when he stood up and he's telling the crowd, he's like waving, yeah, let's go, let's go. He's just walking off the field, and you're like, dude, you can't even move your right arm, and you're like telling everybody, pumping your fists at everybody, like trying to hype the crowd up. Like,
Oh,
he's
he's a
just
wild
different.
man. And I think the most impressive part, and it's natural, right? You expect it, but I think the most impressive part of Danny Stutzman as a freshman versus Danny Stutzman as a senior is just how much more physically imposing he is. Because
Yeah, he's a
when
freak.
he was playing as a freshman, he was good, but he looked like a freshman in
He
that
was
he was
skinny.
still underdeveloped. Now you look at that guy, it's like, okay, that's an NFL linebacker. That's a Butkus Award finalist. That's what it looks like.
And he's owned up to the mini boss or the boss 2.0 mantra. Like he has owned that, and he's done a good job with it, by the way. It's served him well financially, I'm sure. So all right, let's go to the Heisman Hangout, Parker. Big, big lists of visitors. Uh some really big time 2025 DBs coming to town this weekend. I believe there was a linebacker on campus yesterday, I was told, in Dawson Merritt.
There's a linebacker on campus today.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Dawson Merritt got here yesterday in time to watch the scrimmage,
Mm-hmm.
and his visit continues today. And then the
And he'll
rest of
be
the
there.
month,
He'll be there Saturday for the Heisman Hangout as well.
yeah. So and then after this weekend, he goes to Nebraska, and then he has an OV with Alabama over the weekend of the Sooners spring game, so April 19th through the 21st. So those are two schools. I shouldn't say the two schools, but those are two of the schools right there at the top alongside Oklahoma for Merritt in Nebraska and Alabama. And so, yeah, Oklahoma has a chance this weekend to really solidify themselves as a top contender. Maybe not the top contender yet. I still think this is probably a battle that's going to get decided with the OVs, but good opportunity to make a strong impression on Dawson Merritt.
So I was told that Oklahoma is making very, very blatantly telling everybody if you're not at June 21st Champion Barbecue, you're probably not going to be in OU's class
Ooh, that's tough.
because they're running out of scholarships. And that is the big weekend that everybody's going to be there. And that's not to say like the previous weekends aren't going to be in the class. I'm saying if you don't visit by then and say you want to visit on the last weekend of June instead of the 21st, right? I think it's one of those deals where if you're Venables in that staff, they probably don't feel like you're that serious about them if you're not going to be at the Champion Barbecue with it. Because I mean, when you look back at all the big names that showed up and that committed over the last few years, what event did they all go to? Whether unofficially or officially?
The
Champion Barbecue.
Yep.
So they want everybody there for camaraderie, cohesiveness, for it's not to like push people out. If you're not there, you're not going to involve. That's not it. You can take your official earlier or even later. But if you're not there unofficially, I mean, they kind of feel like, and this is just my opinion, that you were not that serious about the Sooners because that weekend probably solidifies that class completely. Would you agree? Almost, at least up to about 95% full. And we're not saying they're going to commit that weekend. We're saying that, well, they are silently, right? They're going to solidify their spot, right?
I do think this is interesting, and I think this is worth pointing out. In years past, the Champion Barbecue has been in early to mid-June.
Mm-hmm.
This year, it's the 21st to the 23rd. And
reason.
so that'll be the last OV weekend that Oklahoma really has the opportunity.
Yeah, they're not
I guess
doing
you could
the last
have
weekend.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you have some guys that are coming in the weekend of the 14th, Floyd Boucard being one of them.
Yep.
But the bulk of your official visitors right now are already scheduled for that June 21st date, which I don't know, like that. You can interpret that in a variety of different ways, but
I just kind of interpreted it like that, and I was
I
told specifically a little bit about that.
but I think what that indicates to me is that Oklahoma is planning on having the class finished after that weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Finished.
They want to go on a
So
break. I think the coaches they're going on a break. Like they're leaving after that, from my understanding, and they'll be back in the middle of July after the dead period, right? Or right the week before the dead period ends, they come back. They start working on getting ready for fall camp and the party in the palace, right? And I think the party in palace, I think what's going to end up happening is you're going to have guys that are fringe, and they're going to say, okay, well then come back for the party in the palace, right?
yeah,
But it's only going to be a select few. Everybody, a lot of the people will be there, and they'll probably have a lot of 26 kids there because the 25 class will be virtually done. So it'll be a big 25, 26 event, probably different than what they've ever done in the past, because it's been notoriously just for that, because they've done an underclassman one day and then the following up the next day with, they might just do half and half, both like 26, 27 one day, and then have like major targets with 25 and then 26 class on that party in the palace. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how they do that with the class being the way it is right now and filling up so quickly.
well, and with a few guys here and there that are scheduled for official visits before the 21st, I would imagine the message to those guys is going to be, hey, you're going to commit on your OV, or you better be prepared to be on the outside looking in, because a week from now, we might not have a spot for you anymore.
Yep.
So
That's
I
kind of what I was.
know for a fact
Let you say
Boucard
it.
is I know for a fact Boucard is very, very high on the board for Oklahoma
Yes.
defensive line. Like if he wanted to commit on the OV, I have no doubt that they would take him. But I also imagine that with a guy like Cole Breeler coming to town the next weekend, they're going to tell Boucard, hey, if you want in, now's the time. Now's the time, because after the Champion Barbecue weekend, we're going to be done. We're going to be full.
That's, yeah, kind of how it was worded to me. Like, speak now, forever hold your peace type deal. It's going to be interesting. But this weekend, do you think OU gets a commit out of this Heisman hopeful weekend? If I gave you the over or under at 0.5, which would mean 1, obviously. But
I'm taking the over.
okay.
I'm taking the over. I have a guy in mind. I think if you're on OU Insider, you have a pretty good sense of who that guy is.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Do you think 2 is possible? Because I kind of do, from what I'm hearing.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I think I don't want to say the name, but
Yeah, sure.
I think they're going to try to put the pedal to the metal on one of the visitors. Toronto OU Insider, I talked about him in one of the I can't remember what thread that you had, and I specifically made that note and name on there, and I said they love this guy and they're going to try to push the issue here.
Yes.
So, do you remember reading that?
Yes.
Okay, so you know who I'm talking about now. Okay.
Yes.
So, yes. So that is kind of I'm with you with the 1, but I think 2 is possible if things go perfect. Now, if they pull 3 out, that would be interesting. And would it shock us the way things have been starting to trend with the 25 class? I don't think 3 would shock us, particularly because, Sperry's going to be there. All the Carl Albert guys are going to be there. All the Oklahoma kids committed are going to be there from OK Preps. And then does Nate Roberts show up to this thing? Is going to be an interesting
and and we
to watch.
And we posted the visitor list, which now numbers 30 total visitors at OUinsider.com. And of course, the comment that a bunch of people had was really no Nate Roberts. And my whole thought on that is like, does Nate Roberts really need to show up?
Yeah, he shows up every other day anyways, doesn't he, basically, for like
By the time
practices?
he has taken his official visit to Oklahoma, Brandon, we will have a dozen visits of one kind or another logged for him in the system on his rivals profile. And I know we haven't had all of them. Like,
Yeah.
I know we don't have all of them. So
does this become a Derek LeBlanc situation where he visits, like he visited Florida like 50 times and he ends up at Oklahoma?
well, and that this is one of the things that I've heard repeated to me by multiple coaches over the years. And it's also just like, it's such an astronomical goal to shoot for that it kind of feels like Captain Obvious. But one of the big mantras for coaches throughout the recruiting process is, if we can get a guy to campus 10 times, there's no way we don't get him. And Nate Roberts has already been to campus 10 times.
I mean, yeah. And he hasn't. I think the one thing people need to understand is that the difference is, and I remember we explained this, when we were doing the Derek LeBlanc thing, right? And we kept saying, they're like, well, he's been to Florida 30 times. Okay, well, so he drove up an hour and a half 30 times, whatever, right? Not that big deal. He flew halfway across the country 6 or 7 times to Oklahoma in between all that. So like that to me was very, very telling with LeBlanc. Like when you almost reach that double-digit visits from a dude from Orlando, Florida, that's a little different, right? Like that's
well, and it's different when he's visited multiple places that many times. But
yeah,
and this is kind of why I still remain optimistic with Nate Robertson. He's up in Columbus right now as we're recording this.
Yeah.
So okay, well, but part of the reason I remain optimistic is because he has not been to any one campus nearly as many times as he has been to Oklahoma. And I get it's the easiest campus in the world for him to visit, but even so, like you still got to go out of your way. You still got to drive half an hour from Washington to come make that trip.
Well, he's very, very close with the OU class, which I think in turn is going to make, that's what the appeal and the allure to Ohio State for Nate Roberts is family. He's got grandparents up there, aunts, uncles, that type of stuff. He also has a ton of family down here in Oklahoma. And no, his brother will not be there. But when you watch your brother play for a school that you grew up loving, by the way, and it just starts to kind of be ingrained in you. So I'm with you. I think we're going to come away this weekend and people are going to be very hyped on Ohio State. Just letting y'all know, there's going to be a lot of buzz with Ohio State and Nate Roberts. But he will also be probably back at Oklahoma watching a scrimmage or a practice within the next week and a half. So, like, just take the body blows that you're going to have to take and just see what happens come commitment time. Because Parker and I still feel pretty good about it. So, all right. What do you expect as far as like 25 is 60% almost done with the silent commits?
Yep.
That are out there. How many 26s does OU have by September 1? I'm going to say 5.
5. My number was going to be 4. I think they get 4 because I think you have your quarterback on board by then. And when you get the quarterback, I bet there are at least a couple more that want to jump on board. You obviously have one long-standing commit in Jonathan Hatton. And so, yeah, my number's 4 by the beginning of the season.
Well, I feel pretty good about Rylan.
Morris.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was clarifying.
Sorry.
Rylan Morris.
I call him by his first name because I've been around him the last few weeks. Rylan Morris. Yes, I feel really good about running back Rylan Morris. He has a visit. I think he's got 2 coming up to Oklahoma on the 12th and the 20th. And so he'll be at the spring game. He'll be there again before that. He and DeMarco have become super, super close. It's actually shocked that he doesn't get talked about more, to be honest. But I think it has a lot to do because Hatton's already on board, and they're like, okay, well, if they get another, it is what it is. But if you go watch Rylan Morris play, he's going to remind you guys of DeMarco Murray. So much like DeMarco Murray. He walks like him. His body looks like him, like physically. Like, it's crazy. Like, I said this a few weeks ago. I told John Hoover that, and he looked, he goes, you know what? You're right. That's so weird. Like, they almost look at their mannerisms are very much similar. So that's that. I think Oklahoma's in a really good spot there. Trying to think who else I feel really good about in 26. I do not, and people keep asking about Colton Yarborough. I don't think they offer him at any point at this juncture. Do you?
He needs better junior tape. Like, I think that's what it's going to boil down to. Like, his offers right now are primarily based on the athletic potential that's there, which is understandable because there's a lot of it.
Yeah, he's a freak.
Yeah, athletically, he looks the part, but
great kid too.
Yeah, awesome kid, no issues there in an off the field sense. The sophomore tape just didn't really pop, and Oklahoma is not the kind of staff, and everybody evaluates differently. Oklahoma is just not the type of staff that's going to offer a kid if he doesn't have really impressive tape. And so I think that's probably a conversation that we revisit 8 or 9 months down the road if he's still uncommitted by then, based on what the junior tape looks like.
Yeah, I think if Arkansas staff stays together, I think they're going to be hard to beat right now with that one. So, yeah, I think we discussed basketball in the last one. It's a shame that Brandon Garrison is leaning back towards Oklahoma State with the new hire. I just, is he going to be able to fill the roster? I just don't know.
Oh, he'll fill it. He'll fill it. Question is,
you know what I mean by fill the roster.
Sure,
yeah. Oh man, this is getting rough. It's, but at least the Thunder are really good, right? OKC Thunder, baby, Thunder up.
I guess.
All right, there we go. All right, I think that's good enough. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, we didn't dive a lot into the names that are going to be there this weekend, but if I was to pull it up right here on my handy dandy phone and showed you who was going to be there, it is, and we're talking about the Heisman Hangout this weekend, hordes and hordes of elite targets in 26, 25, and 27. Elite targets. It is a huge, huge weekend. Something that is almost shocking. You've got a elite D lineman in the 26 class from Mater Dei coming. If that tells you anything, just gonna leave it at that. On top of everything else that we've discussed and hinted at. So it is going to be a huge weekend for the University of Oklahoma. We will have more notes, practices, and all that type of stuff. I know there's a big coaches convention coming up down there as well. So there will be a lot of stuff to discuss and cover. We will continue to follow with Brody Lusk, the basketball transfer portal stuff. If you want to go over there, OU Insider has all that scrimmage notes, practice notes, like stuff you won't find anywhere else right now. OU Insider has it right now. Heisman Hangout notes, like we were on top of it before anybody else. Promise you. Like that isn't a pat on the back. That's not us bragging. That's just telling you, like, it was on OU Insider. And it became a thing after we posted it. Everybody it became common knowledge, right, Parker? that was happening. So it's just OU Insider. Go give us a try. $9.95 a month, $99.95. We'll get you the whole year. We'll get you all the way through the football and basketball season. All the visits, all the official visits, all of spring practice, SEC media days, champion barbecue, party in the palace, all of it. You'll be covered if you sign up right now and go for a whole year. We would love to have you join us. We're blessed to be able to do this job because of you all. Also, subscribe to this YouTube channel for daily updates on OU football, basketball, baseball, and softball, as OU Texas is happening this weekend. And our guys, Jesse Crittenden and Brian Clinton, will be down there covering the big top 5 matchup in Austin for you guys. And we'll have that covered right here on the YouTube channel and OU Insider VIP. All right, that's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast. For Parker Thune, my name is Brandon Drum. You guys have a blessed day.